and welcome to Swing Smarter Monthly Newsletter. It's your host, Joey Myers from hittingperformancelab.com. And I have an old friend of mine that probably when I started, for those of you who know me from swingsmarter.com, is Jedd Johnson of Diesel Crew. He's one of the Diesel Crew. And I want to, first of all, thank you for making the time and coming on.
Oh, dude, I really appreciate you reaching out to me, man. It's been so long since we connected, and I'm happy to be a part of it. So thank you very much.
You got it, brother. Well, hey, I saw on the site or on your personal blog that you have a nickname, and I want you to go into where'd you get the nickname, and it's Napalm.
Napalm, yeah. So on all my YouTube videos, I say, this is Jed Johnson from Diesel Crew. Of course, you know, they call me Napalm. Actually, nobody calls me Napalm. Nobody. There might be two people. But what that comes from is I actually wanted to be a pro wrestler. And I wanted to come up with some kind of a gimmick that was different from everybody else. So at the time, there was this guy, do you know wrestling at all?
A little bit.
Like WWF from the late 90s. So do you remember Kane, the guy that was in mostly a red suit? Yep. So the match where he got his arm on fire. And I'm like, how did they do that? So I found out there was that solution that you could put on your arm that like you could set fire and it wouldn't burn you for a certain amount of time. So I was like, I could be a pyromaniac that every time he won to celebrate, he would set himself on fire. So that's where napalm came from. And if your viewers don't know, napalm is like a chemical or a weapon that they used, I think, in either Korea or Vietnam to burn the vegetation. You would set this stuff on fire, and this chemical would just burn and burn and burn, and it would take down the vegetation, and then try to expose the enemy.
Right.
That's my understanding of it anyway. So that's where I came up with that. I always thought napalm was a cool word, and I was like, I could use that. So I was gonna go with Napalm Jack. There was somebody like the Cactus Jack guy. So Napalm Jed was going to work just fine. I sent that character in first. Tough enough, dude. I took hand sanitizer and I put it on my hand, and I would set that on fire at parties. And it's cool. It burns like a blue flame. It was really freaky.
And it doesn't burn you?
I would have people just, what?
And it doesn't burn you?
It does burn you. So for a few seconds, you're good. It's not like that stuff that Kane had on his arm. I can tell you that. I would have somebody ready with a big towel, and they would just smother it, and it would all go out. And usually there were some, adult beverages involved before this happened.
Yeah.
One time there were a few too many involved. And the guy who was supposed to have the towel had like a dish rag. So I'm like, give me the towel. And he put it on my hand, and it like didn't do the trick, dude. So it burnt too long, and I had these burn blisters in between my fingers. It was sore forever. Made training so uncomfortable. But memories, man. Memories.
Yeah. No, I love that. I always like to hear where the nicknames come from. And so I love how you said that on the marketing side. Hey, everybody calls me Napalm, and you say, but the real is, no, only two people call you that, but I love the story.
Yeah.
Well, hey, I probably should tell everybody who doesn't know or haven't been following me since Swing Smarter days, but Jed is a grip strength ninja. And that's the reason I wanted to have him on, because in the baseball circle, softball circles, I know baseball for sure, grip strength is a big one. And I know just by reading and watching Jed stuff that there are a lot of mistakes that are being made. What are some of those mistakes to grip training that you see going on?
So I think a lot of the mistakes that are made are that people consider grip strength training to be synonymous with just forearm training. So they'll just do some forearm work, maybe some wrist curls, behind the back wrist curls, some stuff like that, basic stuff. And that's better than doing nothing. But there's a lot more stuff that you can do that's more effective. And hey, there's nothing wrong with walking around with big forearms either. And you're going to get stronger. So if you're not if you aren't doing grip training at all and you do some forearm stuff, it'll help you. But there's a lot more stuff that you can do. The other thing, and there's two things, dude, that I see people doing online all the time, and it just drives me insane. The one thing is, and this has been like since the early 2000s, this freaked me out, is they'll do the deal where they take like the dowel rod or a PVC pipe, and then they'll put a wire or a rope on it, and then they'll stick their arms straight out and then do like the wrist rolling.
Yep.
And dude, it pumps blood into your hands and into your forearms. But as far as like the time that you're doing that could be so much more wisely used to develop some hand, wrist, and forearm strength. The other one is like brand new. It's only from like the last couple of years. It's when I see the people taking a 25 or a 45 pound plate and like flipping it and catching it. And like, dude, it's tough. It's hard, but like you're getting nothing out of it. And there's so much risk involved. Like you could tweak a fit. You could tear like an A2 pulley in your finger, and you might have to deal with that for months. I've done that twice. I actually did it both middle fingers on the same day in 2011 one time because I was being stupid. And I dealt with that for 3 months. And then another time I did this ring finger, my right ring finger, just doing dumb stuff, man. And I had to deal with that for like, I was able to work around it and do some training, but I could feel that pain for like 4 months. So plus, not to mention if you miss and it hits your foot or something, man, it's not wise. It's not wise.
Yeah.
So those two things drive me nuts.
Yeah. And we did those all the time. I remember doing that one, like you mentioned, the wrist, was that the curl and then behind the back, all that. I mean, we did all that. We even did this one. We did is that extension, wrist extension, the flexion. And those were all in our repertoire back in the early 2000s. So we landed about that same spot. And we were experimenting with just being, like you said, being stupid with 1 finger, 2 finger pull-ups. And I think I did the same thing.
Oh no. Yeah. It's so risky.
Oh, I can't remember what hand it was, but I remember it was the middle finger, and it was a couple months, and I was just, I'd never seen that before. I'd never seen and it's more, you're talking tendons and connective tissues. Yeah. It takes a lot longer to get it to heal. Yeah.
It sure does, man. It sure does. So the hands are so important for ball players too, man. And to deal with something like that, man, it can mess stuff up for a long time. And I shudder to think, especially like a prospect who's really got a bright future ahead of them, and they go and do something like that because they saw it online or an uninformed coach has them do that. Something, that's a good point, hanging off of bars with just one hand or using like climbing grips. I have wrestlers and baseball players in my gym, and I have a set of they're Metolius rock rings, just a product that you would use for moving towards specific training for rock climbing. I have them hung up on my bar, and everybody always asks me about them. I do not use those grips at all. What I like to do is grip on top of it, and then if I'm having any kind of shoulder pain or elbow pain, I can do my pull-ups on those, and they're hanging from a rope. So I can grip on top of that. It's not a grip challenge at all, and I can move my hands however I want to for that pull-up motion, and it's totally pain-free. So I look over and I see kids trying to stick like their 2 middle fingers in there and do pull-ups. I'm like, no, dude, don't. It's just not worth it,
Is that the same one? Did you see the documentary? Was it Free Solo?
I did, yes.
Is that the one he's got in his van? It's hanging from do you remember it was towards the last quarter of the movie, I think, and it was right before he was going to do the big climb, the Free Solo climb. And he had those had to have been those, and he had him hanging from. He had that little VW.
What color were they?
I think so. He had him up there, and he was doing different finger type stuff. But that guy was a freaking G when it came to rock climbing.
Yeah. That I don't recall. They very well could have. I know most of the ones that I've seen, they're the specific product are green. So if they were green in the movie, they were probably the exact same thing. But the climbers also use things called campus boards, which are generally fixed right to a wall or some kind of surface. A lot of times you see them over top of people's doorways.
Yep.
And you can get just a finger crimp hold on there, and you generally hang for time. And people, they do that because there's so much hanging for time on the rock ledge.
Right.
So it makes sense to go up there and just hang and get your fingers accustomed to it. But like what happens is people go up there and grab it, and then they're trying to do pull-ups, and then they're trying to like reach up and, you know, pull themselves up, reach up to the net. And that is just way too much pressure for an untrained individual. So
what would you say are, I can't remember, I want to say you had maybe 8 different things to do grip wise, because like you said, you just named a few that get under your girdle, you know, the wrist flexion extension, that kind of thing. So what are the, I don't know, 8 principles, half dozen, whatever, that you guys work on for grip and strength?
So the movement patterns are flexion, so that's closing your hands. Also flexion would be bending the wrists like this. You have extension, where you're opening your fingers or extending your wrist. So that's 2. Then you have ulnar and radial deviation. So ulnar is where you would bend your wrist in the direction of the pinky. Radial deviation is where you bend toward your thumb. Okay, and also you're bending towards the ulna, towards the radius. Then you have supination, which is where you're turning your hands so that your palm faces up. You have pronation, where you're turning your hands so that the palm faces down. The way you can remember that is pouring soup. So you would pour soup into a bowl. So pronation, supination. And then you have circumduction, which is where you move your hand through a range of motion. So those are like the technical terms. In grip sport, what the terms that we use are crushing, which would be the flexion, but crushing would be through a range of motion. And then if it's static, then it's called supporting. Support or supporting. Pinching is where you use your thumb. So your thumb would generally be opposing your fingers. It can be static or dynamic. And so any pinching, the limiting factor would be your thumb strength. Then you have open hand, which is anything where you can't reach your fingers around and touch your thumb to your fingers. And of course, some pinch would be considered open hand too, because you'll never get your thumb all the way around some things. And then crimping is where you apply force like this with your fingers. And that would be the kind of strength that you would need to like rip a deck of cards or tear a phone book apart, something like that. So those are some of the, off the top of my head, those are some of the main terminologies that are used.
Yeah, and there's, I've heard you talk about the thick bar deadlifts, and there was a couple other ones that you were talking. The one I liked where you talked about the flexion extension, where you just put a rubber band around here, and then you just open and then close, and it's really slow.
That's if anyone has any kind of forearm pain up near their elbow on the back of their forearm, that's a great drill. You just put rubber bands over your fingers. You can extend it, against the band, and it works all of the extensors in the back of the forearm. So it can bring blood in there and help that area recover if someone's sore.
Carpal tunnel too?
It can be used for carpal tunnel. Absolutely. To help improve that a little bit. A lot of times, from what I understand, carpal tunnel can actually be related to something in your shoulder. So a lot of times when you see someone that has carpal tunnel, they might have some. A lot of times it does come from overuse as well, but because people get the forward shoulder posture internally rotated, that can cause issues that will gradually lead to carpal tunnel as well. So it all, it goes hand in hand. If you have a problem up at the top of your arm, it can translate downstream, they say. So you have to be aware of those things too. That's why it's important for ball players and all athletes to maintain good posture, good enough antagonistic balance between their chest and their back. So you don't want to have an athlete that's all tight in here. That's not going to be good. So you want to have them opened up and their upper back be strong, and maintain that balance between the opposing muscle groups.
Yeah, I like how you said that, because some of my hitters, they come in, throwing sports. So a lot of times they'll come in, they'll say, "Oh, my elbows really, really hurt me," and we'll talk about things that they can do with their wrist to increase wrist mobility. And they're going, "But my elbow," and I said, "No, let's loosen this up, or do some things in the shoulder, like you said, either building the backside, getting like they do a lot of band work, right, Jaeger band type stuff, and so doing the Ys and the the T's and the I's and things like that." And they're like, "But my elbow," and you're like, no, shoulder, wrist.
Yep. Sometimes there's a problem elsewhere and you don't feel it, but because things are tight, it can either shut something down or cause a misalignment elsewhere, which can further result in some kind of overuse or irritation in a connective tissue. So that it's definitely something to be aware of.
Yeah, very cool. Now, you said you had some baseball guys, maybe even softball girls that you train or have trained. What are the top three when it comes to grip and grip strength stuff? What are the top three exercises that you do with them?
So I have everybody do open hand training, like the thick bar stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So like for instance, not tonight, but on last week, I had them just take hex head dumbbells, stand them up, and grab them by the top, and they're and try 20 seconds. I found that right there can help so many different athletes because it gets their hands out and makes each finger work individually. So that's real beneficial. Of course, any thick bar stuff, and another one for
they're standing with that hex bar dumbbell hold. They're just standing there, or are they walking with it?
They're standing and the weights are at their sides.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm so close to the camera, but basically you just deadlift them up and stand there. And I'll have, so if they can hold something, you know how you can just look at someone and see the effort, a lot of times what I'll do is if the proper weight for them is a 20, like a 20-pound dumbbell in their hand, I'll have them start on the 25 and then drop down to the 20, and I'll have them get a total of 20 seconds. And then that way they're not just because the 20 they could probably hold for like 30, 40 seconds. But because the weight increases, but also the implement gets bigger in size, it becomes more difficult. So I like to have like two dumbbells set up for each person, 2 sets of dumbbells, so that they can drop down. And that works out really, really nice.
Yeah.
You know what else I have? I had a coach dad, a dad coach or whatever. The father of one of my players was also a coach, and he ended up getting one of those bats. I don't know if they use them anymore. I don't watch a lot of Major League Baseball anymore, but they used to back in the day have one of those heavy bats that had the weight on it that you could spin, and as it went out to the end, it would feel heavier, right? So the coach donated that to the gym. So what I'll have them do, I don't have them do it like this. It's down at their side, but basically they're going to grip somewhere on that bat. I'll do it like this. And they'll we can just call them jigs. So you jig to the front like you're jigging a fishing rod. And so it's down at their side and they're jigging to the front. They'll jig to the rear. So when they're doing it to the front, the weight is out in front of them. When they're doing it to the rear, it's in the back. I'll also have them do circles to the front either way, to the back either way. And then you know what else I like to have ball players do is I have a nice collection of sledgehammers actually. My sledgehammers range from 3 pounds. It goes 3, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 20. So I'll have them stand with the sledgehammer at their side. The sledgehammer head is on the floor, and then they grab the top of the sledgehammer. So if this flashlight is the top of the sledgehammer, they're going to grab here and they're going to do a finger walk. So they're walking their fingers down like that, and the goal is to go all the way to the bottom of the sledgehammer until they can touch the head of the sledgehammer. And you'd be surprised how tough a 6-pound sledgehammer is for a lot of kids. And the nice thing is I like it for baseball and softball players because of especially the pitchers. And I end up working with a lot of pitchers.
Mm-hmm.
It just seems like in my area, the pitchers are the most serious athletes.
Yep.
I don't know if that's the case everywhere, but it trains you to apply pressure.
Mm-hmm.
So one of my seniors last year, he was developing some tremendous curveball movement
Mm-hmm.
and slider and stuff like that, just by being able to regulate that pressure on the ball. And then his whole season got taken away from him due to the COVID shutdowns. It's my heart is broken, man, because this kid put in so much work. But those are a few drills that you can do either at the gym, or you might have some of that stuff at your house. Even if you don't have a giant sledgehammer, maybe you just have a carpenter's hammer that only weighs a couple pounds. Well, work your way down, work your way up, work your way down. And I know that probably sounds a lot like a wrist roller, but it's not. It's
but
much
to see
different.
but like you said, the wrist roller, you're not even working your fingers. It's just more of this, where you're talking about actually with the finger pressure, which is much more functional, especially when it comes to baseball, softball.
Yeah. Now, to go back to that wrist roller quick, if you're mounting the wrist roller onto something and you're actually like pulling up some serious weight, I'm all about it. So what we'll do is we'll take a loading pin or a kettlebell or a dumbbell, and we'll choke a band around it. And then I'll take another band and choke it around the loading sleeve of a barbell. And then they're like, oh my gosh, this is so heavy, you know? So they roll it up, they let it spin down, they roll it back the other way. So that's a lot more weight. You know, historically, the wrist roller that's used is like maybe a 2.5 pound plate on there. And like, if anything, I always felt it more in my shoulder when we were doing that than my grip. So,
well, how many guys you see or girls doing that, and they're arching their back, and because they're trying, maybe their shoulders aren't even developed enough to be able to hold the weight in that position straight out.
Yeah. That's another great point, dude. That's another great point.
Yeah.
You should maintain that neutral alignment in your spine and everything when you're training, for sure. So,
well, hey man, I want to be respectful of your time. So I want you to give a shout out to where people can find you. If you have any kind of offers or new products or new whatever, go ahead. Just leave it out there.
Cool. So basically my main website is dieselcrew.com. I don't have a ton of articles up there about baseball by any means. But I do have a product called it's Ultimate Forearm Training for Baseball. And I named it that because I didn't figure anybody would know what grip training was. So it's forearm training. Ultimate Forearm Training for Baseball. If you go to advancedbaseballtraining.com/something, I don't even know. I don't even remember what the website is, but that's that product.
You still have it up on ClickBank? You still have that up on ClickBank?
Yes, it is. Yeah. Okay. So put up a link. Put up a link that they can go through. I think it'll help out people tremendously. And it's got 20 workouts already set up that are based around, like, you can go in there and just totally hit your lower arms as hard as you want to, or if you don't have time, or if you're not ready for all that, then do like 2 or 3 movements and it'll be great for you. Really will.
And what I like about everything that you do is you say, well, if you can't afford the weights or whatever, you can be creative and use something that's similar to that you have at your house.
Yeah. Even if you don't have one of those what are those called, man? Those heavy bats or whatever they are. With the weight,
they're like a warm-up bat. I'm not sure the exact actual name of it, but I know what you're talking about. And the people will know what you're talking about.
So for years, instead of doing the heavy bat, I just put a donut on a softball bat.
Yeah.
My beer league softball bat. So we just did it with that. So if you have with a lot of the bats, you can actually fit like a 2.5 pound plate on there, and it'll go on there just fine. So I mean, if you have an old bat that's got a little bit bigger barrel, you can slide it on there and that'll work. So Lots of potential for grip training using stuff that's probably already at your house and in your equipment bag.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. Well, thank you, man. It was great to catch up. We'll have to do a part 2 for sure in the future. But
yeah,
you guys are doing well and dealing with all this nonsense that's going on. And
yeah,
I'd love to hear that you're out there training people.
Yeah, man, for sure. I appreciate it. One other thing, if anyone, I don't know if your viewers watch YouTube much. I have a YouTube channel.
Yep.
If you just search for Jed Johnson and Grip Strength, it'll come up. And go ahead and subscribe. And I'm always putting stuff up there related to grip training, as well as like some other stuff that's like functional for athletes, as well as like muscle building and general strength training as well. So I invite everybody to check that out too.
Are you on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or just mostly YouTube? And
yep, I'm on Instagram. It's jed.diesel.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm on Facebook just under my name, under my personal account. I also have Jedd Johnson, dieselcrew.com. I'm all over, dude. I have a Twitter, but I don't really use it. I never really got into that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't do.
It's a good thing. It's a good thing.
It's
on there.
The snap thing.
Don't even get me started. Don't even get me started.
Yeah, I don't do that one. Instagram and Facebook and YouTube, basically.
Very cool, man. Well, thanks again for your time today, and Merry Christmas to you guys out there. Hold the line.
Thank you.
Hold the line out there in Pennsylvania.
We will, no doubt.
All right, brother. Take care of yourself.
Thank you. You too.
All right, Jed. We'll see you, bud.
See ya.